Hey guys, I'm sorry about the audio quality of this video. I had to get a new laptop and my old microphone doesn't really connect to this laptop, but I'll have that figured out by the next time I make a video. I'm actually just recording it straight through my laptop because this is actually the best way to get it to sound. So, with that, we can move on. And this time, I'm going to be discussing how Batwoman would fight in real life. So, Batwoman has been kind of controversial in the last few years, kind of due to the CW show of the same name, which is apparently pretty bad and kind of more of a political statement than an actual comic book show. I mean, I don't really care. I haven't really followed the CW since the Green Arrow got stabbed by Ra's al Ghul, and then the stab wound moved from like his heart to his stomach. And meanwhile, the Flash was fighting like his third villain, who also had super speed, and he just had to keep getting faster. So I was pretty lamed out by then. Anyway, let's get to it. Batwoman is Kate Kane, a military brat who, depending on the story, either had a father who married into wealth or was the maternal cousin of Bruce Wayne. Kate decided to follow her father's footsteps and join the US military. She attended West Point for several years and was able to pass airborne and air assault training before being outed as a lesbian and being drummed out of the military. I don't really know if this type of thing would happen in the modern day because the don't ask, don't tell policy was repealed, but we could always assume that if it was a modern day counterpart, perhaps a group of her peers or maybe an officer uh, convinced her to quit or shamed her out of the military. So, anyway, after this period in her life, Kate kind of bottomed out, becoming a socialite party girl for a while before becoming the victim of a crime and having a chance encounter with Batman motivated her to become a superhero. Kate then spent several years of training and learning the necessary tools of the trade to eventually take the mantle of Batwoman for herself. It's important to note that, like Batgirl, Kate decided to become a hero without the approval or training of Batman, although, depending on the story, she does eventually gain his respect and trust and becomes a part of the Bat family. At this point, I'm going to discuss Batwoman's capabilities in several categories. First will be her physique, then her hand to hand martial arts skills, followed by an analysis of her weapons, and finally, I will compare her overall to some of the other members of the Bat family. So, according to the DC Wiki, Batwoman is 5'11 and 145 pounds. Coincidentally, she is the same size as Batgirl, who I also covered. Being 5'11 is really tall for a woman. She would be in the top 1 percentile for height while having a relatively low weight at 145 pounds. To put things in perspective, at 5'11, Batwoman would be around the same height as Megan Anderson, who I have discussed before, but a lot lighter. I'm not trying to say that Megan is too heavy or anything, but at 6 feet, the only division that she can fight at in the UFC is the featherweight division at 145 pounds, meaning that she has to diet and dehydrate herself to even meet that weight. Whereas, if the stats are correct, Batwoman walks around at that weight. Realistically, Kate Kane would probably have to be heavier if she's going to have any muscle on her body, maybe in the 150s, but I suppose it isn't impossible for her to be 145 pounds. The only thing is that she would not be able to carry that much muscle, which would drastically affect her fighting style and her athletic capability. The general rule of thumb is that the heavier fighter has an advantage, which is why there are weight classes in all martial arts sports. Now we will discuss Batwoman's fighting style. Unlike the other characters that I've covered, there is no video game that I can play in order to get a general sense of fighting style. There are, however, other sources which I can use, consisting of the animated DC movies that have Batwoman and also that live action Batwoman TV show. So I watched a little bit of the action scenes from that show, and it wasn't super great in displaying Batwoman's fighting style. All I really saw was some wide looping punches, awkward elbows, a push kick, and some sweeps. So, what's my problem with these movements? Wide looping punches can be great when used correctly, they generate more power than straight strikes, but they're also more telegraphed, slower, and leave you more vulnerable for a counter. I don't really have a problem with them when used correctly, but these are the only punches that Kate throws, so it really comes off as amateur to me. So why are the elbows bad? Well, I really only saw one elbow, but it was kind of weird. She had a guy sideways and elbowed him in the stomach for some reason instead of, getting on top of him and punching him in the face. So, yeah, just kind of an awkward elbow right there. The push kick or side kick, like I saw, was fine, but there was really no power behind it, and it was just more of a push. Sometimes it's good to push your opponent away with the leg, but she didn't really gain any advantage. I mean, it's not like she pushed him and set him up for a head kick or pushed him into a wall or out a window or something. Uh, and then the last thing would be the sweeps. Now, I saw a few sweeps, but they seem to be more just for show. Normally, when you sweep someone in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, for instance, you are gaining an advantageous position where you can get a better submission, or if this was MMA or real life, you could, get on top and start throwing down some heavy punches. But she just kind of like rolls people and then they overact and roll. So that's basically the main problem with the show is Batgirl just kind of does stuff that's not really effective or usable in real life, and then her opponents act like they just got KO'd by Francis Ngannou. So anyway, let's just move on to the animated movie, Batman Bad Blood. It does do a little bit better of a job, but I don't know, Batwoman's striking to me at least seemed just to kind of have that generic DC superhero kicks and punches. But at least we can see some solid throws and strikes that look like they have some power behind it. So I'm going to take the liberty to describe how I think Batwoman should reasonably fight given her body type and experience and what she could have reasonably learned in the few years she took to train become Batwoman. So Batwoman is pretty tall, like I said before, even by men's standards. However, she is very light, meaning that she's going to be at a huge disadvantage when it comes to wrestling and generating power in her strikes. Given that Batwoman has the money, resources, and time to train with high-level martial artists, it can be assumed that she would be trained in the best possible way to benefit her body type. In my opinion, Batwoman's best weapon would be her jab. In case you don't know, the jab is a straight punch thrown with the lead hand, usually with the intent to keep distance, stop an opponent's momentum, or set up a combination. With her size and reach, Batwoman could keep enemies back and keep herself mostly safe from wild strikes, giving her time to follow up or more likely grab a weapon. I'm actually inspired by the recent fight between Rob Font and Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt is an amazing fighter with knockout power not normally seen at bantamweight. Cody's style, when he is successful, is to counterpunch with heavy hooks while being very close in range. This style has been rough for him recently, where he got knocked out in 3 consecutive fights after he won the title. His opponents were more than happy to exchange wild strikes up close, causing Cody to lose composure and get caught with punches that he did not see coming. However, in his most recent fight, we saw a more composed Cody Garbrandt, one who did not overcommit and waited patiently. Unfortunately, he waited a bit too patiently for any opening. His opponent Rob Font beat Garbrandt in a way that no one else had. Font relied extensively on his jab and his reach to disrupt Cody Garbrandt from using his counter hooks. Font, being the taller guy with a much longer reach, was safe to land free hits on Garbrandt before disengaging and resetting. Although Font created many potential openings to follow up his jab and perhaps get a knockout finish, he instead chose to disengage and keep jabbing, thus taking away Cody Garbrandt's best weapon and chance to win. So why am I comparing UFC bantamweight Rob Font to Kate Kane's Batwoman? Well, Font and Kane share a height advantage and a strength disadvantage. Font has much less striking power than Garbrandt, and was also shown to be at a wrestling disadvantage, not having the strength to counter Cody Garbrandt's takedowns. Kate will face a similar disadvantage, being that she is relatively light and will have difficulty generating power. Kate's Batwoman will be fighting full-grown men. She's going to have difficulty delivering knockout blows with looping hooks like in the live-action TV show. but she can still stun with her reach using that jab and moving back to safety. I would also recommend and expect that Kate would utilize a lot of kicks in her fighting style. Throwing strong kicks to the head, liver, and legs of her opponents will be very helpful in evening the playing field, and push kicks will help her keep distance and protect her from being grappled or knocked out. She should be careful with her kicks though, especially when kicking the calf, due to the chance of hitting the shin or other hard areas of the body. As a lanky woman without much muscle, Kate isn't going to have the strongest bone density, and if Chris Weidman's leg can bend like a pretzel against Uriah Hall, then I can only imagine what's going to happen if Kate kicks an opponent in the shin and that opponent checks the kick. Finally, when it comes to grappling, I would say that Kate's best bet would be to focus on Judo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Judo is actually pretty viable as a martial art, especially when opponents are wearing clothes that can be grabbed and are fighting on a hard surface like an alleyway or a road. For example, I myself almost got knocked out just by being thrown on a mat by a guy who is not much heavier than Kate. Of course, it helps to be larger in Judo as it does in most sports, but I feel like Kate's best chance to take down an opponent is from a tricky trip or an unexpected throw, more so than, say, a powerful double leg takedown. For example, here is former champ Jessica Andrade, known for her explosive wrestling, unable to lift her bigger opponent. And these two are actually close to the same weight compared to who Batwoman at 145 pounds will be fighting. Further, I will say that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a must. If Kate gets taken down, I doubt she has the durability to take much ground and pound, so Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu will help her sweep to a better position, stand back up, or even pull off a tricky submission like a triangle or an armbar. And one thing that I noticed when grappling with longer opponents was that they had a lot more options from their guard, and their triangles and arm bars were usually a lot more difficult to escape. Wow. So I had a lot more to say about Batwoman's hand-to-hand fighting skills than I thought, but at any rate, let's move on to her weapons and gadgets. Batwoman has access to a grappling gun, batarangs, and even sometimes uses firearms. Also, due to her wealth, she could really get access to any other type of non-lethal weapon you could think of, be it tasers, smoke grenades, whatever is basically available. So every weapon that Batwoman is shown using, I've talked about at some other video, so I'll try to move through this section relatively quick. A grappling gun has some potential, although its best use is just firing the hook as a projectile rather than pulling off any sort of tricky wire attack. Batarangs are not very useful either. They are either oddly shaped throwing knives or light boomerangs. Either way, you might as well be throwing a rock. Tear gas and tasers are useful tools for self-defense. They are often used in real life, but they are not always effective at stopping opponents. Finally, Batwoman's best option would be her gun. Batwoman is shown to carry a handgun, which she typically loads with rubber bullets. Obviously, rubber bullets don't have the same ability to stop someone as real bullets, but they are destructive enough to reliably incapacitate people. Sometimes Batgirl is shown to carry 2 pistols, which I've spoken about pretty extensively in my Red Hood video. In my opinion, it's just not a great idea. After all, there's no military force on the planet who practices this method. So if you have a free hand, like why not use a rifle that has a higher rate of fire and larger rounds that you can aim easier? I understand why Batwoman would choose a handgun over a rifle. Because of the image she's trying to show, I think it's rather reasonable. Also, she will potentially have substantial training in the use of pistols due to her time as a cadet at West Point and any additional training she took on after deciding to become a superhero. So how exactly would Batwoman fight? Batwoman's best bet is to mostly rely on her handgun when she's in danger. This gives her immense advantages over any hand-to-hand weapons or martial arts, even just using rubber bullets. Should she run out of ammo or be surprised, she should use her range to jab and kick at her enemies in order to back up and get a chance to grab onto another weapon. It makes sense that Batwoman wouldn't always immediately go to her gun, much like how good police officers will typically not try to escalate the level of violence if they don't have to. In this instance, Batwoman would probably resort to tear gas canisters and tasers. Should she be caught without weapons, Batwoman would fight with a rangy defensive style and using slick jujitsu and judo in a pinch when she's in grappling scenarios. In conclusion, I think Batwoman would stack up pretty well against the rest of the Bat family. She probably wouldn't be able to match most of them in hand-to-hand combat due to her relatively late start in martial arts and lack of physical strength, but her willingness to use firearms gives her a pretty big edge compared with everyone else, especially her, albeit limited, military background. I think she would be a rough outing should any member of the Bat family try to take her down. So that's the end of the video. Once again, sorry for the audio quality. I recently reached 200 subscribers, which is great. I also seem to be getting more subscribers during the periods which I don't make very many videos. I'm going to try to keep making some, relatively more frequently. It's just I'm graduating law school and I have the bar exam coming up, so I have these weird times where I just can't really make videos. But I look forward to making the next one. I know a few people have been asking me to make a Deathstroke video, which I want to do, but it's going to be really involved, so I actually kind of just want to tackle some other characters first. I wrote a killer I wrote a killer oh my god. I wrote a Killer Croc script, and then I lost it because my computer died. So I'm probably just going to rewrite that and tackle Killer Croc next. Man, I'm not going to edit that out. Fuck it. Okay, I'll see you guys next time. Please subscribe. All right, love you. Bye-bye.